They called for air support, desperate and dying. "Send us a real pilot," they begged. But when Captain Sarah Mitchell dove through enemy fire to save them, the same soldiers who doubted her watched in amazement. Sometimes the hero you need isn't the one you expected. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Captain Sarah Hawk Mitchell adjusted her flight helmet as she walked across the dusty tarmac of Forward Operating Base Falcon. The desert sun was already blazing hot at 0800 hours, and she could feel sweat beginning to form under her flight suit. At 28 years old, Sarah had logged over 200 combat flying hours, but she still faced the same doubts and whispered comments from her fellow soldiers. The morning briefing had been typical. Colonel Barnes stood at the front of the room, explaining the day's mission to support Alpha Company's push into enemy territory near Kandahar Ridge. Intelligence reports showed heavy resistance machine gun nests, rocket-propelled grenades and possible anti-aircraft weapons. It was exactly the kind of dangerous close air support mission that separated the skilled pilots from the average ones. Lieutenant Torres, a cocky pilot with an attitude problem, had raised his hand during the briefing. "Sir, shouldn't we assign our most experienced pilots to this one? Ground troops need pilots who can handle real pressure." His meaning was clear as he glanced toward Sarah. The implication stung, but she had learned to keep her expression neutral. Lieutenant Jackson had joined in, shaking his head with concern. "Close air support is different from regular bombing runs. You're dropping explosives just meters away from our own soldiers. One small mistake and you kill the people you're trying to save." His voice carried the unspoken belief that women couldn't handle such life-or-death precision. Sarah had spoken up firmly. "I've done CS missions before, Jackson. Successfully." But her protests fell on deaf ears. Colonel Barnes assigned Torres as the primary pilot and relegated Sarah to backup status again. Now, as she approached her F-16 Fighting Falcon, Sergeant Rodriguez, her ground crew chief, jogged up to meet her. "Captain, your bird's ready to go. Full weapons load, 2,000-pound dams, cluster bombs and a full cannon. Weather's perfect for flying today." Rodriguez paused, looking uncomfortable. "Ma'am, can I speak freely? The guys in Alpha Company have been talking. Some of them aren't too happy about having a female pilot on standby. They're saying things like women can't handle the stress, might freeze up when soldiers are dying on the ground." Sarah sighed deeply. She had heard these comments countless times throughout her military career. "I know, Rodriguez. It's nothing new. For what it's worth, ma'am, I've watched you fly. You're better than half the male pilots on this base," Rodriguez said with genuine respect. Sarah climbed into her F-16's cramped cockpit and began her pre-flight checklist. Every switch, gauge and system had to be perfect. Lives depended on her aircraft functioning flawlessly. She contacted the control tower and received clearance for takeoff, then pushed the throttle forward. The powerful jet engine roared to life, and within seconds she was airborne, climbing rapidly into the clear blue sky. Alpha Company had been on the ground for 2 hours when everything went wrong. Staff Sergeant Mike Peterson crouched behind a crumbling stone wall, listening to the constant crack of enemy gunfire. His radio crackled with desperate voices. "Actual, this is Alpha 6. We're taking heavy fire from multiple positions. Request immediate air support." Captain Williams, the ground commander, pressed his radio transmit button. "Alpha 6, we have Torres inbound in 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Peterson shouted over the gunfire. "We don't have 15 minutes. Martinez is down, Johnson's bleeding out, and we're almost out of ammunition." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Enemy fighters had surrounded Alpha Company in a deadly crossfire. Machine gun bullets chipped away at their cover while RPG explosions shook the ground. Private Martinez lay motionless behind a boulder, and Corporal Johnson clutched his wounded shoulder, his face pale from blood loss. Peterson tried his radio again. Any station, this is Alpha 6. We need immediate close air support. We're being overrun." At the base, Captain Reynolds answered the frantic call. "Alpha 6, stand by for air support." "Where's our backup?" Peterson demanded. "We were told Torres was coming." "Torres had mechanical problems," Reynolds replied calmly. "But don't worry, she's already in the air." "She?" Peterson's voice carried disbelief and frustration. "You sent the woman? We need a real pilot, not some." "Alpha 6, Reynolds interrupted. "Hawk is inbound to your position. She's your best chance." High above the battlefield, Sarah heard every word of the radio exchange. The doubt in Peterson's voice was familiar, but she pushed aside her emotions and focused on the mission. Through her cockpit, she could see smoke rising from the village below. Her targeting systems showed multiple heat signatures, both friendly and enemy forces dangerously close together. Alpha 6, this is Hawk 2. Sarah's voice came through Peterson's radio clearly. I'm overhead and ready to provide close air support. I need you to mark your positions immediately. Peterson grabbed his smoke grenade reluctantly. Hawk 2, we're surrounded. Enemy positions are north, east, and south of our location. Danger close, they're less than 50 meters away. Sarah studied her targeting display carefully. The enemy positions were incredibly close to the American soldiers. This was exactly the kind of precision flying that required perfect skill and nerves of steel. One small error in calculation and she would kill the very soldiers she was trying to save. Alpha 6, I see your smoke. Confirm green smoke is your position? Confirmed, green smoke is us, Peterson replied. Sarah banked her F-16 into a steep dive, lining up her first attack run. Her training took over as she calculated wind speed, target distance, and bomb trajectory. The enemy machine gun nest on the northern ridge was her first priority. Alpha 6, danger close mission. Take cover immediately. 30 seconds until impact. Sarah's first bomb struck perfectly, destroying the machine gun position in a massive explosion. Debris and smoke filled the air as enemy gunfire from that direction stopped completely. Direct hit. Peterson shouted into his radio, genuine surprise in his voice. Northern position is eliminated. But Sarah was already setting up her second attack run. Enemy fighters were shooting at her aircraft now, tracer rounds streaking past her cockpit. She ignored the anti-aircraft fire and focused on the eastern enemy position where an RPG team was preparing to fire at the trapped Americans. Alpha 6, second run inbound. Stay down. This target was even closer to friendly forces. Sarah had to fly lower and slower to ensure accuracy, making her an easy target for enemy weapons. Bullets struck her aircraft's armor as she lined up the shot. Her hands remained steady on the controls despite the danger. The second bomb exploded precisely on target. The RPG team disappeared in fire and smoke. Outstanding, Peterson yelled. Eastern position neutralized. But we still have heavy fire from the south. The southern enemy position was the most challenging target. Enemy soldiers were positioned in buildings directly adjacent to where Alpha Company was trapped. Sarah would have to use her cannon instead of bombs to avoid killing the American soldiers. She dove toward the target at high speed, her targeting computer locking onto the enemy positions. At the last second, she pulled out of her dive and unleashed a devastating burst of 20mm cannon fire. The high explosive rounds tore through the enemy positions with surgical precision. All enemy positions destroyed. Peterson reported, amazement clear in his voice. Hawk 2, that was incredible flying. But Sarah wasn't finished yet. Her keen eyes spotted additional enemy reinforcements approaching from the west, a convoy of trucks loaded with armed fighters racing toward Alpha Company's position. Alpha 6, I have enemy reinforcements inbound from the west. Stay in position while I engage. Sarah climbed to higher altitude and selected her cluster bombs. The enemy convoy was moving fast across open ground, presenting a different kind of challenge. She had to time her attack perfectly to catch the moving vehicles. She dove again, calculating the convoy's speed and direction. At exactly the right moment, she released her cluster bombs. The weapons spread across the convoy's path, destroying all 4 trucks in a series of spectacular explosions. Convoy destroyed. Peterson shouted. All enemy contact has ceased. As Sarah climbed back to safe altitude, she heard Peterson's voice on the radio again, but this time it was completely different. Hawk 2, this is Alpha 6. I owe you an apology. What you just did, that was the best close air support I've ever seen. You saved every one of my soldiers' lives. Private Davies, who had been wounded in the leg, grabbed Peterson's radio. Tell that pilot she's welcome in our unit anytime. Male or female, that was incredible flying. Corporal Johnson, still bleeding but alive thanks to Sarah's precision strikes, added his voice. We were wrong about female pilots. Dead wrong. Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction, but she remained professional. Alpha 6, are you able to evacuate your wounded? Affirmative, Hawk 2. Medevac helicopter is inbound now that the area is secure. Thanks to you, all our wounded will make it home. As Sarah flew back toward base, she reflected on the mission. Once again, she had proven that skill and courage in combat aviation had nothing to do with gender. She had flown through intense enemy fire, made split-second life-or-death decisions, and delivered precision strikes that saved American lives. When she landed at Forward Operating Base Falcon, Lieutenant Torres was waiting by her aircraft. His mechanical problems had kept him grounded during the entire mission. "I heard the radio chatter," Torres said quietly. "That was some amazing flying, Mitchell. I'm not sure I could have made those shots." Lieutenant Jackson approached as well, his expression humble. "Sarah, I was wrong. Completely wrong. What you did today, that took more skill and guts than anything I've ever seen." Colonel Barnes arrived as Sarah was removing her helmet. "Captain Mitchell, Alpha Company's commander, wants to put you in for a Distinguished Flying Cross. He says you single-handedly saved his entire unit." Sarah nodded professionally, but inside she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Not because of the medal recommendation, but because she had proven herself once again in the most demanding circumstances possible. In the mess hall, Sarah sat eating dinner when Staff Sergeant Peterson approached her table. His arm was in a sling from a minor wound, but he was smiling. "Captain Mitchell? I'm Peterson from Alpha Company. I wanted to thank you personally and apologize for what I said on the radio." Sarah looked up from her meal. "No apology necessary, Sergeant. You were scared and focused on protecting your soldiers. Maybe, but I was also wrong. Gender doesn't matter when you're that good at your job. You're the kind of pilot every ground soldier hopes for when things go bad." Peterson sat down across from her. "Mind if I ask you something?" "Go ahead. How do you deal with all the doubt and criticism? It must get frustrating." Sarah considered the question carefully. "It used to bother me more when I was younger. Now I focus on being the best pilot I can be. My aircraft doesn't care if I'm male or female, it only responds to skill and training." "Well, you've got both in abundance," Peterson said. "Every soldier in Alpha Company knows that now." As Peterson walked away, Sarah felt a sense of completion. She had not only completed a dangerous mission successfully, but had also changed minds and earned the respect that every professional soldier deserved. The next morning brought a new mission briefing. This time, when Colonel Barnes asked for volunteers for a particularly challenging close air support mission, Lieutenant Torres immediately spoke up. "Sir, I recommend Captain Mitchell for lead pilot. After yesterday's performance, she's proven she's our best option for dangerous CAS missions." Lieutenant Jackson nodded in agreement. "Mitchell should take lead, sir. She's earned it." Colonel Barnes looked at Sarah. "Captain, are you ready for another challenging mission?" Sarah stood up confidently. "Always ready, sir." As she walked toward the flight line once again, Sarah reflected on how much had changed in just 24 hours. She was still the same skilled pilot with the same dedication to protecting ground forces. But now, finally, her fellow soldiers saw her for what she truly was, a warrior whose courage and skill transcended any outdated prejudices about gender in combat. The sound of jet engines filled the air as Sarah climbed into her F-16 for another mission. She had proven that in the sky, where life and death decisions happen in split seconds, only competence and bravery mattered. Her wings of steel had carried her through doubt and discrimination to earn the respect she had always deserved. And somewhere in the desert, soldiers who had once questioned whether women belonged in combat aviation now knew the truth, that heroes come in all forms and courage has no gender.